Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping back into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Federal Ant 9. Ex's divorce lawyer, send 3 years of complete financials or else. Me, as you wish. Let's jump right in. This happened several years ago when my ex and I were going through a heated divorce and custody battle. While we were married, we had a couple of conversations about how rich people hide their assets to avoid paying taxes. I've never had enough assets to do this, but she somehow got the idea that I was and told her attorney that I was laundering money and hiding income. It was more likely the heat of the moment, as divorce and custody battles often come down to. I couldn't even afford my own attorney, so I represented myself. Her lawyer wasn't a total butt, but he clearly was out to get me, and he talked down to me like I didn't deserve to breathe the same air. One day, I get a letter in the mail from him requesting an updated income declaration form and 3 years of financials. It had a long list of things to include. I own a communications tech company that was in super startup phase back then. Money was already tight. I was trying to get this business off the ground with no financing. I was finishing my MBA with scholarships and loans, so paying for copies and postage or driving this 30 miles to his office meant eating peanut butter and saltines for a week. So I called him to explain my situation. He all but called me a liar and didn't believe I couldn't afford it. I was put off by that, and I said this was taking time away from business I needed to handle. To which he replied, and I'll never forget this, "Well, according to your income declarations, you're not that busy. What do you do all day?" He then said if he didn't get these documents, that he would consider my previous filings as fraudulent, tell the judge, contact the DA, and also alert the state tax agency and the IRS. Probably an empty threat, but I'm no lawyer. eFax is one of the services my company provides, and at this time, it was relatively unknown. So I asked him if he had a fax machine. He said he had a fax scanner copier device, then said what law office doesn't have a fax machine, and I suddenly got an idea. "Okay," I said to him, "I'll put together and fax whatever I can." "Okay, mother effer, you want 3 years of financials, you got it." I scanned to PDF every receipt I could find. McDonald's receipt from 5 years ago, F it, won't hurt to include it. CVS receipt, it's 3 miles long, perfect. They get the $1 off toothpaste coupons too. I downloaded every bank statement, credit card statement, purchase orders from vendors, and every invoice I sent to clients. I printed to PDF the entire 3-year accounting journal, monthly, quarterly, annual balance sheets, cash flow statements, profit and losses. Not only did I PDF 3 years of tax filings, but every single letter I received from the IRS and state tax agency, including the inserts advising me of my rights. It took a while, but I was a few days ahead of the deadline. I made a cover page black background with white lettering. Wherever I could, I included separator pages in all caps in the biggest, boldest font that would fit on the page in landscape. This year's receipts, this year's taxes, etc. I merged everything into a single 150 plus page compressed PDF and sent the document using my eFax system. Every hour or so, I received a status email saying the fax failed. Huh? That's weird. Well, they're getting this document, so I changed the system configuration to unlimited retries after failures to keep redialing until it went through. Weird, I was still getting status email failures. I'll delete the failure emails and keep the success one after it eventually goes through, I thought. Problem solved. 2 days later, a lady from his office called and asked me to stop sending the fax. Their fax scanner printer copier had been printing non-stop. It kept getting paper jams, kept running out of ink, and they had to keep shutting it off and back on to print. I explained that her boss told me to send this by the deadline or else he would call the DA and IRS. Since I didn't want a call from the DA or the IRS, I would keep sending until I get a success confirmation. I suggested they just not print until my fax completes, but she didn't like that. She asked me to email the documents, and I told a little white lie that my email wouldn't allow an attachment that big, unless her boss in writing agreed to cancel the request or agree to reimburse me for my costs to print and ship. I said I would continue to fax until they confirm they have received every page. She put me on hold and the attorney gets on the line. He said forget sending the financials. I said that I would need this in writing, so I kept sending the fax until he sent that to me. He asked me to stop faxing and he would send it in writing, and I said send it in writing first and then I'll stop. Long moment of silence, click. About 20 minutes later, I received an email from his assistant with an attached signed letter in PDF that I no longer needed to provide financials. The letter then threatened to pursue sanctions in court or sue me for interfering with their business. Every time I saw him after that, the lawyer never brought up sanctions, lawsuits, criminal referrals, or financials again. I think the best part of this whole story is the black cover page with white text. Amazing. Also, the big, extreme separator pages, those were really well done as well. OP, I wouldn't want to get on your bad side. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Toe Bob. You can eat at the hotel. Let's jump right in. A long time ago in the late 90s, when I was a young IT consultant, I was sent out of state on an assignment. The sales manager decided to make all of the travel arrangements for me and my coworker. We were to stay at a Holiday Inn type hotel he booked for us. When I asked about daily expenses and a rental car, the sales manager told me that the hotel had a shuttle that would take us to the worksite and we could eat at the hotel restaurant. I tried to argue with him that I'd like to see the town or eat somewhere other than the hotel, but he wouldn't budge. He paid for the flights and the rooms, and we could charge our meals to our room. Anything else would be paid for out of our own pockets. I was young and broke, so I didn't have much of a choice. I settled into the expectation that I would have a boring week of hotel, work, hotel for 5 days. When my coworker and I arrived at the hotel, we were quite surprised to find that it wasn't at all a Holiday Inn type hotel, in spite of the fact that it had inn in the name. It was quite fancy and the rooms were comfortable and spacious. The hotel restaurant, though, was something my lower middle class self had never experienced. This was a restaurant that didn't print prices on the menu. In fact, I couldn't even pronounce half of the items listed. Meals were a set cost regardless of what you ordered. Breakfast was $40 per person, lunches and dinners were $60 per person. Knowing we had no car and no way to expense anything that wasn't charged to the room, my coworker and I dutifully ate 3 meals a day in the hotel restaurant. I had 5 days of filet mignon for breakfast and various gourmet lunches and dinners while the hotel shuttle took us to and from the workplace all week. Now, years later, I'm not even sure I remember the city I was in or the work I was doing, but I remember a week of filet mignon for breakfast and the look in the eyes of the sales manager when he saw his credit card statement. That was a great trip. I can't even begin to think of how much this cost the sales manager. Car to the worksite in the morning, back for lunch, back to the worksite again, back for dinner, and then the same thing 5 days in a row. Wow, lots of money. After reading the comment section down below this story though, I get the idea that some people who travel for work like to take advantage of the expenses and eat at the more expensive places. I'm not sure if that's a normal thing, so I'd love to hear your guys' comments down below. Those of you who have traveled for work, do you live it up in expense at all, or do you go frugal and not try to charge very much? Let me know. Our next story today comes to us from Mad Dan Eccles 1, eating out on expenses. Let's jump right in. I'm not sure if this counts as malicious compliance or merely cunning compliance. A long time ago, I was sent to France for a week to undertake some technical work for a client. The way that expenses worked was that hotel, food, and travel were paid for by me. I then submitted an expense report and receipts to my employer, who would refund my costs. My employer would then submit a copy of the receipts to the client, who would reimburse my employer. Simple-ish. So this particular client had a couple of rules. 1, they would not pay for any alcoholic drinks. I mean, in France, really? And 2, they would not reimburse their own employees for food when working from the office, even if they were in until midnight working on a project. The project manager at the client was a great guy, but applied the rules to the letter. So on my first day out there, he took me aside and said, OP, I will not approve any receipt that has alcoholic drinks on it. Is that understood? Here's a list of my favorite local restaurants. Have a great stay. I was a little taken aback, but I wanted to have a good time, and I like good food. So I picked a restaurant from the list and went for dinner. When I arrived at the restaurant, I saw the menu. It was a fixed price for entree, main, dessert, and a carafe 500 milliliters of wine. F. But I was hungry, and I'd pay for it out of my own pocket because the menu looked amazing. I got the receipt after the meal, and it simply said, Le menu, 40 euros, no mention of wine or of what I ate. Second night, tried another restaurant on the list, and the same thing happened. Okay, I think I see a pattern with this list. And so the week went on, and I dined very well, in addition to sampling a lot of local wine. When the final day came and the project was nearly done, we all, myself and the client's project team, fancied going out for lunch. But of course, the client wouldn't pay for its employees' meals. Again, the manager took me to one side and said, I cannot approve any of my team's expense claims for lunch. However, let's say that you, on behalf of your employer, were to buy us all lunch as a corporate hospitality, and then your employer sent that receipt to me as a project expense, I would be able to approve that. So I did just that, being careful to choose a restaurant from the list naturally. Needless to say that every expense claim got approved. I had a great time, the manager ended up with a very happy team, and the rules were followed to the letter. We don't get very many stories of people who work together for a common good. This manager knew exactly what was going on and worked the system so that their whole team could get a free meal. Pretty well done, I like it. Our last story today comes to us from Master Thief, the college student and the crappy desk. Let's jump right in. Since it's back to school time, a malicious compliance story from my senior year of college. Backstory: I worked for my college's housing office for 2 summers, mostly for the free summer housing and decent spending money. So after the students had left for the summer at the end of my junior year, I was able to get a set of master keys to check out the dorm room I was assigned to the following year. It was then that I noticed the crappy desk. The top was covered with cigarette burns and it smelled like butt. 2 of the drawers were broken, plus I'm tall, and that model of desk wasn't made for tall people. Now, I had a nicer desk at the time. As I had spent a year living off campus, we were only guaranteed 3 years of on-campus housing. I figured that I could just use my nice desk my senior year with its keyboard tray and ample space and move the crappy desk into storage with its equally broken crappy furniture kin. My housing office boss at the time shrugged and said, fine, do whatever. So come move-in time, that's what I did. I moved the crappy desk into storage down the hall. Then, my floor's resident assistant came by for his beginning of year inspection, saw my nice desk, and asked where my university-issued crappy desk was. I told him it was crappy and down the hall in storage. And then he said, that's against university policy. You gotta keep university furniture in the dorm room, no exceptions. But my boss at the housing office said it was fine, I said. Well, university policy says otherwise, he said. But it won't fit, I said. Not my problem, he said. So after 10 minutes of stewing and considering how I would fit the crappy desk into my room, I took a closer look at the crappy desk, and I saw it was put together with screws. Now, having a handyman dad, I had been sent off to college with a goodly supply of hand tools, and it took 3 hours of work with screwdrivers and pliers on a Sunday night into Monday morning in the floor lounge. The screws had been glued in place and required much force and foul language to remove. But I had successfully disassembled the crappy desk. The panels, bag of screws, and 3 of the drawers I was able to store under the bed in my room. 1 large drawer had to go in the closet on the floor. The next week, the RA returned for another inspection. He asked me where the crappy university-issued desk was. I slid the panels out from under the bed, and before he could say anything, I said, "You said the desk had to be in the room. You did not say how." The RA, to his credit, simply rolled his eyes and told me that I had to reassemble the desk upon move-out or I'd be fined. I told him I would, and when I told my dad the story, he laughed and said he'd bring a drill and screwdriver bits when it came time to move out. And true to my word, I reassembled the crappy desk at the end of the year, the day after I graduated college, though the process gave it a crappy wobble too. I presume it was replaced by the university. I never got a fine or a bill. My nice desk continued to serve me faithfully for the next 15 years, through first jobs and law school, until it too developed a wobble and went to its eternal reward. Moral: when life gives you something crappy and says you have to keep it, break out the tools, break that crap down, and shove it somewhere out of the way. Can we just go back to the description of the top was covered with cigarette burns and it smelled like butt? That pretty much describes every dorm room I've ever seen. In the comments for this one, there were some interesting things in there about people disassembling their desks or the chairs they were given and putting them into the drop ceilings in their rooms because they didn't want to use them. Interesting. Also leaving presents for the next people to find in the ceiling at some point later on. Now, I never went to college myself, but that sounds like it would have been a pretty darn good time. Check out all 4 OPs, they are linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.